panel about navigating the publishing world. I will introduce myself and have each of our lovely panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. So my name is Michelle Jing Chan. My pronouns are she, her, and I will be moderating this panel today. I'm a picture book author, illustrator, and a graphic novelist. My most recent upcoming picture book is a little golden book about pride, and my first graphic novel about asexuality comes out in 2027. And now I will have each of our panelists introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm Natalie Naudus. I'm an audiobook narrator. I've narrated over 400 audiobooks at this point. And I also have written a book called Gay the Pray Away. That's it. Hi.
I'm not ready. Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing? Woo! Yeah, that's the vibe. Fantastic. My name is Ngozi Ukazu. I am a young adult graphic novelist. I'm probably most well known for my comic book series Check Please, which is a young adult graphic novel, queer love story about a figure skater who loves to bake and joins a college hockey team and falls in love. I also work with DC Comics. I just published my first graphic novel with them called Barda. And I'm working on the sequel to that, which will come out in like 2 years. And I occasionally publish cartoons with The New Yorker. But the thing I'm maybe most excited about is a book that I created with my co-author here, Madeline Rupert, called Bunt. And it's the story of students at an art school who have to win one game of softball in order to get athletic scholarships. If you're laughing, then some of you have tried to play softball. So yes, I made that with Madeline Rupert, who drew the entire thing. So that's me. Thanks, guys.
And that's me. So hello, I'm Mad Rupert. Mad is short for Madeline. I am a comic artist and writer. I have been publishing mostly webcomics my whole career. I have 2 ongoing webcomics. One is Sakana, like young adult, and the other is for adults. Which I will not be discussing at this panel. I've also done lots of licensed comics for Cartoon Network properties like Adventure Time, Regular Show, Steven Universe, Clarence, and then Frederator properties like Bee and Puppy Cat, Bravest Warriors, and then also Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, all kinds of stuff. More recently, yes, we have made Bunt together, and Ngozi and I, very good friends. We went to grad school together at art school, which this may or may not just be trauma from that. And then more recently, I have entered the world of concept art for video games. So that is currently what I am working on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maia Kobabe. I use the pronouns EM/air. I am definitely most known for this, the most challenged book in the US the past 3 years, my very personal memoir. But I also put out a book in May called Breathe, which is about chest binding safely, trying to sort of maximize mental health benefits and minimize any potential physical health risks. I am currently working on my 3rd book, which is a middle grade that will come out from Scholastic, ideally in 2026. So don't hold your breath, but it is on the way. So, yeah.
All right, thank you so much, panelists. And now we will get into the questions. I will leave 15 minutes at the end for any questions that you all might have. So my first question, I was wondering if each of you could walk us through how you got your start in the publishing industry.
My best friend sent me a screenshot of a tweet, because I've never been on Twitter. Thank
Congratulations.
God. I know.
Congratulations.
A good choice, honestly, in retrospect. Anyway, an agent was looking for a non-binary illustrator for a children's picture book project, and my bestie screenshotted this and emailed it to me, and then I responded to the email. I think it looked like a 3-sentence email at like 2 a.m, being like, "Hello, I am non-binary and also an illustrator. Here's my portfolio. Would love to hear from you," or something like that. And this was the 3rd agent that I had reached out to, and the first 2 had been not good fits at all. It was sort of like a too hot, too cold Goldilocks situation. And then this 3rd agent and I ended up really clicking, and I ended up signing with her in 2017, just as I was also sort of in the process of selling this book. And then we've been together that whole time, but also it took us sort of a long time to sell a project together. We didn't actually sell something together until 2020. But that is kind of the random way that I entered the publishing industry. But previous to that, I had quite a bit of self-publishing experience and sort of Kickstarter book experience, small pressy type of experience. But that was, I would say, my sort of first step into the real, publishing industry.
My next. Let's see. I have degrees in music, actually. I was trying to be an opera singer, and it's hard to get hired to be an opera singer. It's kind of like trying to be an astronaut. There's just not a lot of jobs. I'm sorry? Oh, no, I'm good, thanks.
You have to be paid. You have to pay me to sing.
So I was looking for a job that like paid better money, and I was getting ready to go back to school or something, and I looked up audiobooks, and it turns out that people record audiobooks in home studios a lot these days. So I just made a little studio in my closet, and started recording audiobooks, and it went great. And I work for all the major publishers now, and I kind of made a niche for myself in recording sapphic audiobooks. Probably the biggest first one that I did was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. And I wrote my own book. I tried to write books before, but this is kind of like my own story, kind of reimagining my very conservative Christian childhood and imagining if I had come across queer fiction sooner. Because books were such a big part of me coming out to myself, because I was reading them for work, and I was like, why am I like obsessed with queer stories? Maybe I'm seeing myself. Yeah, so I wrote my own book, and I did get an agent and query it traditionally, but we did not sell it, and I self-published it. But then I sold the print rights to Quirk recently, and it's being republished next year.
So I would say that probably every publishing experience, everything that I have right now, all came out of starting a webcomic while I was in undergrad. In my junior year, it was January 2010, so it makes it very easy to know just how old it is, which is 14 years old at this point. My webcomic, I mean. Yeah, so that was sort of my first, I don't know why I thought that I could just like, I started this project for a class, and I just said to myself, well, I want to continue to practice all of the things that I'm learning in class, which, I mean, I was going to school also for comic books. So I was like, what better way to practice comic books than make my own comic book in addition to all the comic books I have to draw. So, and then once I was maybe a few chapters in, one of my classmates had gone into like the editing track at a publishing house, and they came back to me the next year and were like, hey, I've been watching you publish Sakana this whole time, and clearly you know how to draw comics and tell a story. Would you like to do some work for regular show comics? So after that, I started working for Boom Studios, which I don't know. But I probably made like about 1,000 pages for them over a very short period of time. But yeah, so it was it started there. I wrote and drew a mini series for them for regular show, and then I did a mini series for Adventure Time, and then I wrote like 20 issues of regular show, and then I just kept sort of more and more and more until eventually I was like, I want to go back to webcomics. So
Hold up your book.
this is Sakana. This is volume 1. So yes, then I sort of got out of publishing and went back to webcomics for self-publishing, did 3 Kickstarters for this, and then my dear friend Ngozi was like, hey, you want to come back for one final job?
One last heist.
One last heist. And so, yes, thankfully brought me onto this project, and we made it together.
We made it together, and it's funny, like unsolicited, I will just tell people, they'll be like, oh my God, how was making Bunt? It was the best story ever. I was like unsolicited tell them like it was one of the best experiences of my life. Making Bunt was fantastic. My journey to publishing, like I feel like I've come all the way around to where I'm such a fan of self-publishing. My journey started with self-publishing, and it moved from there into being published with publishers like Macmillan publish and the imprint for Second, being published with DC Comics. But now more than ever, I understand like the importance of self-publishing, especially in times like these, where self-publishing gives you so much agency to tell exactly the right story that you want to tell. Letting yourself make your own mistakes and like connecting with an audience that is really specific to you. So I think in our conversation we'll talk more about the intricacies of getting into publishing in that world. But I really encourage you guys. I always do a very interactive panel. How many of you guys are interested in telling your own stories? By show of hands. Fantastic. The great news is that everyone here already has the power to tell their own stories, and self-publishing really is a fantastic way. It might seem like a small thing to like make a small series of a small print run, but when you hit the right audience and hit the right readers, it could really the ripples can go far and wide. So I started off with Kickstarters. Actually, I started off with super janky zines that I printed off my home printer, and I didn't even have like a long stapler, so those were rough looking. But I remember selling them for like $3 at the Mini
Comics Expo.
Yeah, that like I think Kit or one of our professors told us to sign up for.
Yeah. Oh, that was fun.
That was fun because it felt like the Wild West. I was just like, I have a story. I'm gonna print it on my home computer. And a year and a half later, I was waiting for a cargo ship to arrive in LA so the books can go to the warehouse in Austin so I could fulfill my first Kickstarter. So don't be afraid to start small. It teaches you a lot about the process from coming up with a story to actually seeing it in print. And yes, I'm a huge advocate for self-publishing.
I love that all of you have such different journeys. It just shows that the road to publishing is very varied. And I love that, Ngozi, you brought up this topic of self-publishing, because my next question is, most of you have done both traditionally published projects and self-published projects. Could you explain for the audience your different experiences between these two and how you decided which route was right for you for each particular project?
May I jump in? Since I was already ranting about it. I think self-publishing, I would say it's interesting because usually when you start a project, you know automatically whether it's going to be self-published or not. Like if I'm working with IP characters that already exist, it's going to be like, that's going to be a pretty traditional publishing route. But when it's my own characters, I have the option of pitching it to a publisher or maybe doing it myself. I'm a very strange case where I started my webcomic in 2013. I had no idea that it would take up a decade of my life. And then I ended up, fortunately, after self-publishing for so long, a publisher approached me and said, hey, we would basically like to license your book. So I kind of went both ways with Check Please, having this very strong self-publishing background. And then a publisher came along and said, like, we can amplify, we can get your books and like, we can translate them to like Russian, we can get them in like bookstores in Spain. And I think it's just kind of, you hit different audiences with self-publishing versus publishing. And there's definitely more intimacy with self-publishing, but there is a greater range and just folks that I never thought would pick up my graphic novel are able to find it in bookstores and libraries across North America and other places.
Yeah, I think that certainly I think the most true that self-publishing works best for like the wildest, wackiest things you can possibly come up with that are like so deeply true to yourself that I always this is, you get your 10 sickos who are interested in what you have to put out there, and it's just you and them against the world. And traditional publishing gets you like 1,000 normal people, but self-publishing gets you 10 sickos. sort of how I always think about it. That, those 10 sickos are also going to read your traditionally published stuff too, but
we did
10 dedicated.
We did an entire book tour, and I think the sickos.
I said 10 sickos at every
sickos
single
monologue
at
gets
every
everyone
stop.
riled up.
Yeah, every stop. But yeah, I think certainly when I think about like Sakana, if you've ever read this comic, which it's fine if you have not, it's in black and white. It's in strip format. There's like 2 pages, like stacked on top of each other. No publisher is going to look at this and say, ah, yes, this will be easy for us to print. Like, this absolutely has to be a labor of personal love, self-published only. I also do stuff that is for mature audiences, and that is certainly more of a self-published route. I don't think there are many traditional publishers out there who are interested in that sort of content, but you know what? It's the most popular stuff I've ever done online. So there's lots of people out there. It's just you can reach people in a different way than a publisher can. And it's just kind of a matter of like, who do you want to talk to at the moment?
Yeah. So I wrote this as like a pretty personal story. I was raised really conservative Christian. This is my book. And I did query traditionally, and I got a couple agent offers right away. And I thought, oh yeah, Michelle did my cover. Spoiler, when I ended up self-publishing. Yeah. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah, so I got an agent and I thought, okay, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make so much money. I was really excited. Make money from my trauma. It was going to be exciting. Pay my therapy bills.
Yes.
Yeah. And it didn't sell on sub. And I got some comments from editors like, if she's willing to rewrite it, we would take another look at it. It just didn't fit in a spot. It's kind of a cult memoir, but it's not a cult in the way that people like to watch TV shows about cults where people are like, in bunkers underground and like locked up and stuff. It's like my real life experience cult where it's just like you're all only hang out with your church people and you're told not to talk to any of your neighbors. And I didn't realize it was a cult until I grew up and I was talking to my friends and I was like, yeah, we all burned CDs, right? And they were like, what? And I Googled the homeschooling program that I grew up in and I was like, holy shit, it was a cult. Like, it's like, it has its own Wikipedia page. It has articles about it. Anyways, so my agent said, hey, it's a really personal story. Why don't you just publish it your own way? Which I really appreciated. And so I did that. And Michelle did my beautiful cover that I love so much. And it was really nice to get to tell this story in my own way. And I didn't feel like I had to commercialize it to make it fit for TradPub. And it has resonated with people so much. I still am getting emails and messages from people who are like, oh my God, you wrote my story. It was me too. And it feels like so niche. And it's like what you were saying, but there were so many people who are like, oh my God, I grew up adjacent to this. Yeah. And then because it was doing well and because I have so many wonderful authors that I have recorded their books with similar audiences, I organized my own book tour and I went and I did events with like Alex Harrow and Casey McQuiston and Rachel Lippincott. And the book did well. And then an editor at Quirk read it and really is queer, Taiwanese American, grew up religious, and brought it to
Someone
Quirk.
like got it. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really got it. And so it's being republished. And they did an incredibly light edit on it. So I am ending up getting it a second life with exactly my story the way that I wanted it. And so many people have commented when they email me that they are scared to pick it up because that religious trauma is so painful. And trauma like that tends to be sensationalized in TradPub. And they really appreciated how gently it was handled and that I didn't make it into trauma porn. And I am just so thankful that I ended up publishing it my way because I was told several times to do it differently. And so I'm glad that it gets to be out there the way I wanted it.
I just read it very recently in preparation for this panel, and I remember thinking, this is like a book to heal inner children. Like,
Yes, it's exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
This isn't a book to like scare people or freak people out. This is literally to help people who've had some sort of parallel experience, like heal. Yeah, that's really wonderful. And I feel like I sort of skipped over how much self-publishing I did before I was traditionally published, but even this was like the very first draft of this was actually a bunch of little black and white diary comics I put on Instagram. And it was a kind of similar thing where I was like, I just need to write about my identity and my personality, like this stuff that seems really personal. And the initial idea was just like, this is a tool to like help me come out to my community. And like, this is a tool to start conversations with people who actually know me, my friends, my family, etc. And I made this work, and initially I self-published it because the audience I was trying to reach was just my acquaintances, my family. And I was like, I don't need this to be everyone in the world. It's just for people who actually know me. So that's why self-publishing partly felt like the right route. And it was only after I'd been online for a while and it was starting to get those responses of people saying like, oh my gosh, me too, that then I was like, oh, maybe this actually is interesting to a wider audience. And then I started being interested in pitching it as a book. And I think for me, some of the things that caused me to think, do I want to self-publish this versus do I want to try to pitch this? There's a couple factors. One, we've probably all experienced, going through a traditional publishing process is very slow.
Yes.
You will finish a book and then it may be over a year before it is out. And it's just going through editorial and line edits and copy edits and just everything. It takes forever, frankly. And sometimes you're like, I just want to put a little thing on the internet tomorrow. And for me, it's partly like, how long is this, or how urgent is this, or like, is this just like a little thought or a little comic or something more the length of an essay that I'm like, I just want to get this out there. I just want to put it out there so people can read it. And I don't want to have to try to also tailor it to be sold, just express. And that's, I think, something that I would then self-publish versus trying to pitch to like a magazine or publisher.
Yeah, I definitely connect with everything you guys all said, especially the part about publishing being slow, and especially the part about, especially in today's era and post-election, the kind of stories that we want to tell not always having a place in TradPub at the moment. On the note of that, what were some of the lessons that you learned in publishing your first project, whether it was self-published or traditionally published?
Have an agent negotiate your contract. Do not try to do that by yourself unless you maybe have like a legal background or like a really good head for numbers. I would say, getting an agent, I think, is just so useful. Even when your agent can't sell your book, they still gave you advice that was really valuable. Yeah. So, like, I feel like you can't overemphasize how important, if you want to get into a traditional publishing role, having an agent be on your team.
Thinking.
I think I am the only person on this panel who does not have an agent, and that is simply because most of my experience was in self-publishing, other than all of the licensed work, which I do wish I had had an agent for because that was extremely exploitative. But that was at a time of my life where it was my very first job, like my very first thing that I saw on store shelves. So I was, much younger than I am now. And I was just really hungry for like that sort of like, I'm out there. You can see my name.
Wanted to see your name in print.
Yeah, exactly. On the shelf, on print. And then it took me a few years of like the most incredible asks, like the things that they were asking for over the years. Eventually I was just like, no, I can't do this anymore. I have to stop. And so then, I like jumped out of the traditional publishing industry pretty hard for a long time, stayed in just self-publishing as much as I could, found a lot of success there. And after like 12 years, 14 years, this is the first original comic I've ever had on store shelves. So everybody has a different, career. Everybody has it takes different times doing different things. So, and thank God for you and for George and for Chelsea.
Oh my God.
Grandfathering me into this agreement. So it was very good.
And I hope it's not too gauche to say, all of our books are available for purchase upstairs on the 4th floor, right at I think that's, what is it, table 708 or something?
At Charlie's Queer Books, I believe.
Yeah, they are fantastic, queer and trans-owned bookstore right here in Seattle. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, there's honestly so many lessons to speak on. Maybe if I can come up with something that is a little bit generic and a little bit specific. I think the generic advice would be, if you are interested in publishing, either traditionally or doing self-publishing, you're doing your research. I always recommend that people do as much research as they can, talking to people who have been through the process, like doing a small project and getting it out there. Kind of take baby steps. If you have that dream of saying like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to be a writer and I'm going to get my first book out there and there's going to be a huge book tour and I'm going to get an agent, and just start small. Again, just doing small zines gave me so much joy in grad school, and it can really teach you a lot about the publishing process, either self or traditional. Specifically, it's weird, but it's kind of like business advice of who you know. What is it? Your network is your net worth.
What is that from?
I know that's not from anywhere. It's from not.
That's from the dome.
Yeah, it's from. That's not off the dome, but I think who you know and kind of making sure you are kind of. I don't know. I don't want it to seem too like transactional, but like when you meet people who seem positive and kind and curious and also happen to be talented. It can really affect your career. Like, I think through you, I ended up meeting George, technically. It was you. And then you told me about our friend Taylor Carilli, and they had worked with George on, and George became
This is insane.
No, I'm
This is
serious.
the first time I'm hearing about this.
And George is still my business manager. And because of George, we ended up going to New York Comic Con in 2019, where I met my agent. And because of my agent, I met like a film and TV agent. Like, it's just kind of building a really solid network for support can really lead you to so many different things. So I have an incredible team. I'm really thankful. And it's just like, seriously, it starts with the people that you meet in places like this. So, yeah.
I want to echo too, like, doing your research and talking to people who've gone before you will help you hopefully not be taken advantage of with a
I would not recommend anybody work at Boom Studios.
at like an unfavorable contract, or like, if you haven't, say, been published or have friends who are published, or like there's lots of podcasts these days, there's articles, there's really a lot of resources out there.
May I say, Graphic Novel TK is a wonderful podcast run by, oh my gosh, Gina Gagliano and
An industry giant.
Yeah, an industry giant. Like, they drop so many gems in that podcast. Listen to it. I think I might have. Was I on that podcast? I don't know.
Probably.
Maybe.
I think you were.
Oh yeah. So I was on this really cool podcast. No, Graphic Novel TK. I don't think they do any more episodes, but honestly, they should put that behind a paywall.
That's
download
if you're
them.
more interested in the prose side, I've just gotten very into a recent podcast called Publishing Rodeo, which is 2 tour authors, so prose writers, sci-fi writers. They are very candid about things like advances, working with editors, different publishing, different people's journeys into publishing. So like, doing your research will help you sort of understand the lay of the land and hopefully not end up in a bad situation.
I think that it's really cool that we live in a time that you can just kind of put stuff online sometimes and see what comes of it. After I published this, I was trying to figure out, I wanted to kind of keep writing, but something lighter and just for fun. So I started a Patreon with my girlfriend, and we wrote sapphic erotica, and we were putting out a story a month, and that's great. And we're still running it. It's a good time. We're having fun. We do it in audio. I record it. But then just a couple months ago, I got contacted by the Quinn app, which does all adult audios, and they had found my Patreon, and because of that, they were offering me a very good sum of money to start doing stuff on their app. And so I'm writing my own content there too. And it just, if I hadn't just like put something out there, it wouldn't have led to the next thing.
So yeah, that's another like self-publishing into sort of paid position sort of pipeline once again.
Yeah, totally. I think, again, all of what all of you said are great examples of how testing out the waters, trying out your own personal projects, trying out different self-publishing avenues, and just making stories that speak to you can lead to other opportunities. I want to go back to something that all of you mentioned about finding a community of people, finding a network of people who you can support each other and lean on each other for advice. Because so much of the publishing industry is remote, especially for us creators, I'm wondering if you have any advice for how to build a community of folks in publishing.
I mean, one option is to go to school for some type of program. I think all 3 of us went to arts grad schools. And I did meet people through that, colleagues, friends who did, offer open doors later on. But going to school is very expensive. So I really recommend art school with a huge asterisk caveat. So read Bunt and see what it's like before you jump in, because it's honestly horrifyingly accurate. Yeah, so that's one way. And then, I mean, I also think that that's the thing, is self-publishing also can lead to like meeting people and meeting those communities. And like, I spent the first maybe 5-10 years of being in comics just trying to do like basically a zine fest a month. I was in my 20s. I had much more energy back then. I certainly could not do that now. But especially if you have the time and the energy, and almost every major city has at least one zine fest at this point. And there's some cities are real like zine hubs, places you might not expect. Like I think basically the best comics show in maybe America is in Bethesda, Maryland.
It's SPX.
It's SPX, and like like loads of places have really good zine. So if you're comic specifically, if you're prose writing, do you have thoughts on if you're like how to meet people if you're more of a prose writer, network and community?
I know that there's a lot of like writer groups online. I kind of just started chatting with authors who I was recording their books, and then saying, "Hey, I need to talk to you about agents, or can I ask you a question?" And I made friends that way.
Yeah, and like most people do really like sharing this kind of things, and like a lot of authors are very passionate about sort of education around publishing and the industry. And then if you meet someone who isn't, you don't want to be friends with that
There's
person
plenty
anyway.
more fish
Yeah,
to see.
like like if someone blows you off, don't chase that. Just find someone nice to talk to.
This might be controversial, but fandom. I don't know.
We're on a panel about this tomorrow.
Fandom for me is one of the purest places, because it's a place where your money is no good here. Everything is about enthusiasm and creativity. And it turns out when you meet people who are enthusiastic and creative, they are exactly the type of people who might end up being your peers when you go to a professional realm. So if you are in a fandom, it shouldn't be. You shouldn't be in like the comments of AO3 trying to network, but you might. I mean,
No,
if
but
you're doing that, that's kind of cool.
You
sort
can
of a
be there
flex.
trying to make friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're reading some like weird Alpha Omega fan fiction. You're like, so are you on LinkedIn? That's
Can you believe?
honestly, someone's gonna be like, this is the great. Anyway,
The thing is, if they are, then that's like your new bestie
That's
for life.
incredible. If they're on LinkedIn.
That's your ride or die.
So, but yeah, if you find people who you connect with creatively, it may not be like, a professional connection, but they might know other people, and that's where you can really develop really rich creative friendships, and hopefully those can translate to professional relationships as well. Maybe. They don't need to. I don't think fandom for the sake of fandom is like, that's what I
A
believe.
pure expression of joy.
Yeah.
Do you have an answer to this one, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely relate to everything that all of you said. I think online friendships from people you've collaborated with. I reached out to a bunch of comics friends when I was kind of pivoting from making picture books to graphic novels. Online, like writer communities as well, fandom, and friends I met who, even if they aren't in publishing, they are in fandom. And so they are good at telling stories, and they're good at building community, and they know other people in that community. I would say in the picture book world too, something that really helped me find friends is just going to local kids' story times, which sounds weird, but every bookstore and library event I've been to is very, very welcoming of anyone going to their picture book story times, even adults with no kids like me. But by going to a lot of those events, I was able to meet other local picture book authors and illustrators and connect with them. And then, you become friends, you work together, and you get to go to each other's events and listen to them read their picture book to you and support each other. So yeah, definitely echo everything that you all said too.
Yeah, and certainly webcomic artists are very like collective in nature. Yeah, because making a webcomic truly is a labor of love. And so you're all sort of toiling away in the mines together. So a lot of people will sort of like put together their own little like circles of like, if you like this comic, you should read my friend's this, and this comic, and like vice versa. Also for pivot, getting into concept art from comic books, that really is also like a networking thing of, you're just getting in touch with people who are interested in doing the thing or who are already doing something that you are interested in doing. It's like there's no better thing you could do for yourself than to see something, recognize that that is what you want for yourself, and then reach out and ask if the person would be willing to like help you understand how they got to that point.
Going back to a topic we talked about earlier, which is finding an agent in traditional publishing and the importance of that. I think this is one topic that folks looking to break into the publishing industry, it can often feel like this big, scary black box that nobody talks about. So I was wondering if each of you could talk briefly about kind of what you looked for in an agent and advice on how to find an agent. I know we only have so much time, so if anyone is interested after, we can all share resources on that process more, but I just wanted to get a quick take from all of you.
Okay, well, going back for a second to what we were talking about networking before, my biggest networking tip is to make friends, not like connections. Some of my best friends have come out of doing audiobooks and meeting other authors. And I think that there's like a vibe that I get sometimes, especially like when I go to audiobook narrator stuff, that people are trying to meet you to try to meet somebody else. And it's like, what can you do for me? And it's not a good feeling. And just like be a genuine person and try to make real friends. And I think that that leads to the best relationships that lead to something else. As far as finding an agent, I did a query letter. I ran it by some author friends to see, if it was looking good. And I think it was like I think I combined, because they wanted like a first chapter for a lot of these submissions. So I like combined chapters because I didn't feel like the first one got far enough. So I just made it like chapter 1. And I queried just traditionally I used Query Tracker to see who I was sending stuff to. I was on agency websites, and they'll have specific instructions about if they're open to submissions, if you can query more than one agent in their agency at a time, stuff like that. And I think I sent out like maybe 5 at a time. And then when they were rejected, then I would send out some more. I had an easy time getting an agent, but not selling the book. So I got really good interest right away. And as soon as you get interest, everybody like wants you. It's like the industry runs off of FOMO. And so
All buzz.
So I met with all the agents, and they all like really wanted me. And I talked to some authors, friends, and like got the buzz on the agents and what they asked for me, like in their little private author discords, like, what do we know about so-and-so? And then I ended up signing with my agent, which was easier than selling the book though. So, yeah.
What to say about Chelsea Eberly at Greenhouse Literary, who is my agent. And I honestly I was sitting here thinking, like, how do I not speak about this woman without getting emotional? So I don't know. It's okay. Getting an agent is very hard. But I met Chelsea, and it was like I was on Tinder for 5 minutes, swiped on the first person, and now we're married. I lucked out. I don't know what to say other than I lucked out. Chelsea is fantastic. She was an editor at Random House for 10 years and then became an agent. So I have an editor and agent in one. And she's also the president of her, she's the president of her literary house, which has other agents. So I have someone who I feel like I really don't know what to say. I just feel like I'm saying like wedding vows. Like I just have someone who is not only a true fan of books, but is really precise in how they look at stories, and also has the business acumen to really fight for good deals. And she walked up to me at New York Comic Con and was like, "Hey, are you looking for an agent?" And I was like, "Who are you?" And then a few months later, I was like, "Wait,
where have you been all my life?"
Yeah, and I did query other agents. I talked to a few other people, and at the end of the day, I was looking for someone who understood that I am an author and I am a cartoonist, but at the heart, I'm a sicko. I'm like a weirdo.
You're one of those 10 sickos.
I'm a weirdo webcomic artist, and I was like, Chelsea, I might do another webcomic, and she was like, "Oh, okay. And I was like, I might do interpretive dance. And she's like, sure, if that's the way you want to tell stories. And I was like, you get it. And then I signed with her. I think you really want to look for someone who, some people don't need the hand holding and some people don't need the like narrative collaboration. They just want someone who can get them the biggest check, the biggest advance, the highest royalties. I needed someone who was going to be part of my team. So it took a long time. Yeah, that's really all I can say. Like, just be patient and try to put your best work out there, and hopefully people will respond to that work in a genuine way.
I want to echo what you said. I think the most important thing is that your agent feels like a member of your team. They have to feel like they're on your side. They believe in you. They believe in your stories. They care about what you're doing. They're interested in it, because if they don't like it, they can't sell it because they don't know what it is. They don't see the value in it. And so like I talked to one agent who is a real big name hotshot in the graphic novel industry that many of my friends are represented by, and I couldn't communicate well with her. She seemed like, I shouldn't even have used pronouns. Basically, I was like, I feel unbelievably stressed the entire time I am talking to you, and that's not how I want to feel. And then I was like heavily pursued by someone else who seemed like was just trying to cash in on the graphic novel bubble that was sort of happening in the mid 20-teens. But didn't seem that very knowledgeable of the industry and didn't yet represent any other graphic novelists. And I was like, I just don't. So it was like I had one person who blew me off and then one person I ghosted because it was like, the vibes are just not good. Yeah, it is weirdly like dating. And then I talked to, so my agent is Emily Mitchell at Wernick and Pratt. And interestingly, she actually also didn't represent any graphic novelists. I signed on thinking I would be doing children's picture books. That was something I was pursuing at the time. But it was really important to me that on her website, she had a like commitment to diversity statement. She was like, I am interested in representing queer, trans, non-binary, and POC neurodiverse authors. And I was like, thank you for saying that really directly, because that is very important to me. And so, things like that, signaling that she cared about the type of things that I also cared about. And then honestly, it was just, we had a conversation and it just flowed. It was easy. It was easy to talk to her. And she seemed into what I was doing. And I was like, all right, this feels like a good fit.
How has it been? Can I ask a question? For you, how has it been, like, your agent with all the media attention and stuff that's been going on? How essential has that been?
Huge. Yeah, huge. That's another thing, is my agent completely stepped up during the book challenges and has gone, I think, way above and beyond what maybe would be strictly required by an agent relationship. I basically took my email off of everything on the internet and put up hers instead. So she like filters most of my emails now. She helped me like set up and figure out what to say during like interviews. She almost became kind of like a speaking agent as well. She also helps arrange a lot of my trips and my travel, which some people then have a second agent who's their like speaking engagements agent. But like I kind of was like, I trust this woman with my life. Yeah, she's been like a rock. She's been really amazing. And I think it's interesting because, again, we had not sold very many projects before all of the book banning stuff happened. We'd literally sold like one project, and I'd had moments where I was like, I wonder if I was with a more aggressive agent, if I could be getting more work. And then the shit hit the fan for me, and she showed up, and I'm like, all right, I'm with you for life. Like, you have proven yourself to me, and also like proven you're willing to like sometimes I'm like, man, how many hours of this woman's life do I take up? But yeah, it's like, a standard agent contract is they take 15%, but only when you sell something. You don't give them a cent, and they don't give you a cent until you've sold a project. And she has well earned her 15%.
I am so glad that all of you are with agents that advocate for you, especially, as you said, with all the book banning going on. And I think above all, it's better to be with no agent than to be with a bad agent. Yep. And last question before we open up the floor to audience questions is, dealing with rejection is something that is a universal experience in the publishing world, and something that we have all experienced. So could you talk about either a time when you experienced that and how you kind of learned to handle that, or just in general, any advice you have for dealing with rejection in this industry?
Who wants to go first on that one?
I think failure is really important, actually, and rejection is a form of failure that tells you it can take a lot from it. it's weird because I fortunately have not experienced a lot of rejection in the publishing realm. That's because I've done so much self-publishing, where the only person to reject me is myself. But I did experience a lot of rejection before I went to SCAD. I actually tried to apply to a lot of animation studios with storyboarding gigs. For storyboarding gigs, I tried to get internships. And for whatever reason, either my art style or my storytelling aesthetic didn't appeal to those corporations. And it's interesting. It just kind of teaches you, like, okay, certain industries want certain things. It's really nothing more than that. And it just pushed me to go more into telling my own stories and making sure that the way that I told them, like how they were drawn, it was undeniable, I guess, to the people who would enjoy them. So I don't know. It's like a strange thing where rejection can be humbling, but it can also be focusing. And it just kind of nudges you in a different direction.
Yeah, I deeply relate to that. Before I was working on this, I had a middle grade fantasy story that I worked on as my master's thesis in college. It was also a webcomic. I ran it for about 5 years. I drew somewhere between, I don't know, 150, 200 pages. And for a long time, I thought that would be my first book. And I was very interested in doing the webcomic to traditional publishing sort of route with it. But it really never gained any traction. People were not really reading it. It was kind of not the right story at the right time. And also it had a lot of first book weaknesses. I started when I was 22. Not everyone is a genius at 22 and can start a story that has legs. And literally mine just didn't. That first agent that I didn't click with basically ripped my story to shreds, was like, this is unpublishable, and listed out all of the flaws and all of the weaknesses and all of the problems. And that was very hard to hear. It was very hard to have someone stomp on something you'd worked on for like 5 years. But I had to leave that and be like, you know what? Not all of this criticism is like there's a lot of valid criticism that I've received. And if my goal is to have it traditionally published, that's really something that's probably just not going to work. And I had to wrestle through some really like tough decisions and like, grieving process, etc. And I ended up giving up on that story and completely walking away from it. And the next thing I did was this. And it like you said, it turned my focus from one thing to another. And it also turned me from, because I love like fantasy and YA and adventure and magic, I want to write a story with all of that, and being like, I think I'm just not the right author right now to tell a story like that. What if instead I talked about the really deep, emotional, personal stuff that I've really been wrestling with that hasn't showed up in my work at all because I haven't processed it yet? And so I feel like I had this pretty intense experience of rejection and failure that completely shifted the trajectory of my career. And I went from primarily like pursuing middle grade sort of fantasy, YA fantasy, to almost a career memoirist.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like because I've been so firmly entrenched in self-publishing, I feel like at this point I know what would be required of me in order to like pitch a graphic novel to a publisher and have it be accepted, because there are things that they're interested in at certain times, and I'm like, well, I don't really want to write that. I was like, I want to write my weirdo thing for my sickos, so I'll just start another project online to like get all of my little ideas out. I do think that I have sort of experienced the utter ego death that comes from trying to transition into a different career in your mid-30s with the concept art stuff. And it really is a lot of like, if you want something specific, you have to see what somebody is doing. And if you're not doing something that can not necessarily compete with it, but at least match it, then you have to change what you're doing. Like, you have to sight the goal in the distance and then run directly at it. It's and for me that came when I realized the comic books that I had been drawing. I was good at drawing comics. I love to draw comics. What I am drawing is not applicable at all for concept art. Like, I have to learn an entirely new set of skills in order to become a concept artist for video games. And yeah, it was learning how to render in a painterly style where I've never really done that. It was learning how to pick colors better and do better anatomy because it will look differently in 3D than it will in 2D. And just all of these screaming blow-ups that I would have, like one after another, trying to teach myself new skills. But then eventually, yes, it does pay off. Eventually you will get back to a point where like it starts to make sense again, and then that's when you can keep moving forward.
I like the term ego death that you used because I definitely went through
ego
that
death.
big time. I got a undergraduate and a master's degree in opera. I went to Europe a couple times. I paid for very expensive programs to try to make connections and sing and meet people, and it was just like smashing my head against a wall. I just wasn't getting anywhere. The industry is so incestuous, and it's like by the time you're 18, if you don't already know the right people, you're screwed. And I was teaching a lot of music lessons. I was singing in really not great productions, and I just got tired of trying to walk through the doors that were closed. And when I found audiobooks and I started making money doing that, I just left singing. And my friends were all like, "Where did you go? Or do you want to sub here? Or we need a mother in a mall here." And I was like, "No, I'm out. Like, I'm going to walk through the doors that are open now and find the people who want what I have to say instead of just feeling like a failure all the time. Like, I'm going to find what is open to me." And singing just was not. And it was really, really hard to walk away. And that was when I read about like the sunken cost fallacy, where you're like, well, I put so much time into this, so I can't walk away now. You can.
Yes.
You can
You
always
can
walk
always
away.
You could
walk
always
away.
walk away.
And it's better to walk away and find something new and better than to just stick with the stuff that will never love you back.
Was that skeleton meme? It's like you can
Get out
you
quick.
can just get out of there.
The bricks.
Hit the bricks. Yeah, that's it.
I also failed at like computer science and engineering too. So guys, it's like a
You can
history.
fail at anything.
You can fail and still survive.
and
like
still survive.
like crying in like a dean's office about those failures. So yeah.
All right, and with our last couple of minutes, we will open up the floor to any audience questions. I don't know if there's a mic to pass around. If not, I can give this one into the audience.
Yeah, and then we could share something if we need to. Yeah. Then we still have 2 mics on each couch, and we can.
Yes.
Mike the couch.
Also, okay, listen, if no one has a question immediately, I want to hear about your failures.
What? Whose failures? Oh, yeah.
Not so much a question, but a comment, especially with the way things are going right now. I just wanted to say thank you for writing the stories that you're doing, for telling your stories, and for making sure that those stories are out there so that none of us feel as alone as is coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
We all have to stick together.
Resilience.
I'm just really curious about how you found your way to the audiobooks.
Oh, to me?
Yeah.
To narrating audiobooks, I Googled who narrates audiobooks. And I realized people were doing it from home studios. So I just bought the stuff, set it up in my closet, and started auditioning for stuff on ACX, which is Amazon's way to get indie books onto Audible. And then once I'd done some of that, I started going to industry events to try to meet people and make friends. And now I work for all the major publishers, but it's all through connections. And someone gave me really good advice early on saying that audiobooks is the publishing industry, it's not entertainment. So it's a soft sell and long relationships. It takes time. It's not like a quick thing. And that was really good advice because it's a marathon.
Do you have an audio agent?
No, audiobooks are unagented.
That's interesting because I actually also at one point looked into getting into audiobooks because I really like reading out loud, and I read the audiobook of my own book. And I remember when I was researching it, it seemed like it was very similar to freelance illustration, where it's like a gig-based job and you had to be constantly applying and sending things out. And it seemed like people had agents, but I wasn't
No, audiobooks, when people do agents, it's like Tom Hanks's agent.
Oh, I
like
see.
for
Like
us,
if
we
they're
do it.
maybe like an actor.
Yeah, voiceover people who have agents for other stuff, they don't do the audiobooks. But it's contract based, so we're always trying to find more work and keep our schedule full. Yeah.
I will say, so the audiobook for my book was with Penguin Random House Audio, and they do have a mentorship program. I think it's maybe annual. I want to say there was just an
think so, yeah.
application. I just saw it and I sent it to a friend who's also interested in audiobook. So like there are some resources that you can apply to if you want to get into it.
So I know one of you mentioned like first book failures. What would you consider those as someone who's looking to tell a story, common pitfalls and things like that?
You said first book failure? Okay, I would
Oh,
I love Sakana, but
no, put it down. Put it
no,
down.
the thing is that it's not a failure. It's taken 14 years to tell. So don't start with something that takes 14 years to tell.
Yeah,
That's my.
I think especially in the webcomic world, it's extremely common that people like, I'm going to start my huge fantasy epic.
Don't do the space
that's-
opera first.
Yeah, space opera, 500 years of history and 4 continents and blah blah blah. Yeah, maybe don't do that. I think it's just testing the water with zines, like you mentioned. Like start with a zine, start with like a little piece, start with something you're going to put online, and like that can be so valuable. Like to test, figure out what your writing voice is, or if you're drawing, what media are you using? Even like, are you drawing this digitally? Are you drawing this traditionally, etc. But if you're thinking more in the novel realm, I would have considered the first big project I worked on. I would say it had a lot of first book failures. Mostly what I mean by this is I was very young when I started writing it, and I wasn't super aware of the world. So like one failure was in the first draft of the book, every single character was white because I hadn't yet thought about including racial diversity in the cast of my characters. So that was one big issue. And then that was pointed out to me by a professor in grad school, and I went, oh shit. And I like added a bunch of new characters and like tweaked things. But also it was like I included a character who could throw fireballs without having given one thought to like the magic system. So I was like, wait, why can this person throw fireballs? Is that like a talent you're
It's the
born
rule of
with?
cool.
Yeah, it's just like I was like, are you born with this? Is it something you study? And then I'd like made a fantasy world that was like roughly based on like England in the 1300s. I've never been to England. I don't actually know anything about this country except for reading other fantasy novels. So it was like a very like unformed world, I guess you could say. I was not writing from my personal experience, right? And then I turned around and did the exact opposite, which is like write only from deeply my personal experience. And my book I'm working on now is fiction, and I want to write more fiction in the future, but like, I think trying to start something that is A, too big, B, too vague, and C is kind of just derivative of everything else you've read, and not bringing something that's really from the core of you into the story.
I feel like we like write similarly now that I'm hearing you talk, because that was my experience too. I tried to write a couple books, and it was just derivative of all the stuff that I liked, and trying to write something that people would be like, "Oh my God, that's so beautiful!"
Seemed cool.
Like,
yeah.
yeah. And I ended up writing the thing that I made it all the way to publishing was the thing that I felt like I was the only person who could tell this story this way. And because I read so much, there's that feeling of like, what new do I have to say? Everyone's writing amazing things, and it really had to just come from my core.
I would say when you're working on your first graphic novel, your first novel, it's probably going to be something where you get all the way through it and then you realize like, oh, this is like so jumbled, this is confusing. You might not even finish it. Like even I have a first webcomic that I started and abandoned, and that's okay. I think you learn so much in that process. If you find that you continue to start projects and don't finish any of them, that's a different situation. But definitely that first big project that you undertake, it's going to be difficult, and it's okay to step away from it as long as you reflect on what you learn.
I think the best thing you could possibly do is make something that is like 50 pages long, like maximum for like your first foray. Because then it's manageable. It's a little more than a small thing. It's like something that is a good chunk. A novella, yes, either in prose or in comic book form. Just see how it feels, and then just keep practicing that.
Oh, sure. In our 1 minute, I can share a failure for me too. Yeah, I mean, I think about what Ngozi just said about failure teaching you something you need to work on. And when I first pitched my graphic novel in 2023, I just had this idea that was fueled by spite of being spiteful about there not being a lot of asexual graphic novels or asexual characters in general, particularly gray ace characters, and particularly gray ace allo-romantic characters. And so this graphic novel idea was born out of spite. But when I first, went to go write the pitch, I had never made a comic longer than 15 pages, and I didn't go to art school, so my anatomy and figure drawing was not good. I was used to only drawing pretty much kids for picture books. So I remember my first round of, sending it out. The feedback we got kind of across the board was, we love the story, but everyone looks too young. And then looking at the characters now, I cringe at that because I'm like, yeah, everybody looks like they're a 10-year-old. This is a graphic novel with like 18-year-olds. This is a YA graphic novel. So anyway, I spent a couple months, learning figure drawing and borrowing my friend who went to animation school's old textbooks and literally doing all of those exercises, and then send things back out again. And then that's when like it got picked up by multiple editors. We went to auction, etc. So I think that failure was definitely a learning experience. And if you can look back and cringe at your old work, it means that you have grown from that failure.
That's a privilege. That's a privilege.
It's a true privilege.
But anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for coming to this panel. Thank you to our lovely panelists.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please buy our books.
And please feel free to follow all of our awesome panelists on their social media handles and websites below. And have a great day. Thank you.
You can buy our books upstairs. I'm not trying to give you guys the hard sell.